So my family has been here for a really long time, and so when I was a kid, I would actually visit my grandmother here every summer, and so that was actually how I know the Art Center, which is where I'm at now. But my mom, then when I was in high school and graduating into college, she moved to Landon Lane to be close to family. So that was kind of a weird transition time in life, but I was in and out of the town basically all throughout my childhood, and it was always a place where I could visit with family and where I could see my cousins. And so it was somewhere that always felt very much like home, because there was always creative things to do here. You couldn't get me out of the library. You know, I would check out as many library books as they would let my grandmother put on her card. And so it was always a very exciting place to be, especially because I spent most of my childhood actually living and going to school in Richmond County, which is an even smaller community. And so it was nice to kind of come to the big town in Orange and be able to see everyone. It's a real country girl. Yeah. But then when I was in college, I had opportunities to do study abroad. I went to Old Dominion University, and they have heavy connections to Japan, so that's where I did my study abroad and what I minored in, and then that turned into a whole adventure that really kind of took me all over the world. But Orange and Virginia are home.
But you came back.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I'm a boomerang.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, it's a place where I always felt there was a lot of potential. It was a place that, and it remains a place where people can do their own thing and still enjoy history. And working in the arts, that's something that is very precious to me. So having that kind of value reflected in where I choose to live is really important to me. And so, despite having traveled all over the place, and yes, I did spend about a decade in New York City, it kind of made me really look at the ways that different people live in their communities, how they work in their communities, and what community means. And that's why it made sense for me to come back, because I could be part of something. I could bring some of what I had learned and some of the things I'd been exposed to here. And so it's kind of giving back, but being part of an exchange as well, because it's not all just what can come from outside. There's already good roots here.
Yeah. So if you could maybe compare some of your memories from when you were a child visiting here compared to what you're experiencing today in the present in the town of Orange.
Absolutely. So it's honestly very connected, and I would say that one of the things that has made me feel most connected, other than, people, but a solid object and touchstone that is still here, is the old kick wheel in the ceramic studio of the Art Center. And so kind of a funny piece of that is that I'm left-handed. And when I must have been about 15, and I was learning ceramics for the first time. And at that time, the Art Center didn't have as many wheels or the full ceramic studio that it has now. And so there were no left-handed wheels. And so there was this old stone wheel, though. This very, classical, what you do when you didn't have any electricity. And so that was what I did that summer. I learned how to throw ceramics on the wheel using an old kick wheel, and I had one big thigh and one little thigh. And and that's how I learned. And, while everybody else was sitting there with their clay and just getting muddy, I was getting a workout too, And it's still there. There have been a couple of times when people have said, oh, let's get rid of this old thing. And I've just kind of thrown myself over it and said, no, that's a treasure. That is a memory for me.
Yeah. You, of course, are now the executive director of the Art Center in Orange. And let's talk a little bit about how that fits into the town of Orange and how that's making the town of Orange a better place to live.
Sure. So obviously I have that very strong memory connection to the place. But it's also important because it is not just a place where art can happen, it's a place where community can happen. And something that I've always seen of Orange is that people have many different communities inside of this small town. And the Art Center is really a place where those different groups can come together in a place that is really open and full of potential for collaboration. And so it's also a way to bring people in to get different contributions and to work with other organizations to do things like the Historical Society exhibitions, working with the museum, and really find different ways that other people can contribute to art in a very broad way. There's so many things that can be art, even if people don't think about it that way. So for me, it's bringing the community together in a really creative way, and that's what we can give the town. And the way that it really connects with everything we're doing.
Let's talk about the future a little bit and how the Arts Center will play into that.
Well, so my hope is that we can get more people involved, and that will definitely be part of shaping the future. My belief is that art is a powerful way for people to collaborate across divides. So no matter how you feel about something, there's always going to be a commonality in what you can create. And so for me, I think the Art Center really represents that, and the future of the Art Center is dependent on people wanting to join together in that way. So, art isn't inherently one thing or another, and so I think it's an opportunity for this community to grow, to have respect for what has happened before, but also to create new avenues for expressing what it means to be in or from or moved to Orange.
Yeah. Virtually every person that has sat down in that chair to talk about the town of Orange talks about how there are fewer retail businesses on Main Street than they were when they remembered them as a child or as a young adult. And I'm getting the impression that's a paradigm shift that's maybe not going to change. Mm-hmm. But certainly things like the Art Center are going to take the place of those missing businesses, aren't they?
I think so. And that's why a lot of my focus in coming back and working through the Art Center has really been, first of all, how can we engage the community? How can we revitalize the community, especially with the blow presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, which set everybody back. And so including the town, including the arts and all of these fields, and it all folds in. But art is a vector for future investment. And so a lot of what I've been talking to people about is things that might seem small. It might seem like one artist interview or one exhibition that's looking at history or whatever the project is. That one thing isn't going to have the impact that's going to lead to new businesses coming into town. But what I know from my experience outside of this community is that that's absolutely true. When you have a thriving community that has art, that's celebrating culture, that is bringing in everybody's contributions, that actually creates a lot of interest and a way for business to come back. It's economic development through the arts. And so that's something that I really want to help do for Orange. It's part of the beginning of the Art Center in general, beautifying things in town, creating the original Gateway mural to cover up a junkyard, and really bringing everybody in on those initiatives so that we can have these things that are ours, but that are also really attractive. So when we have an empty building, it's full of potential. It's an empty vessel, so it can be filled.